My life at 38 wasn't quite what I had envisioned. Sitting alone in our living room, surrounded by the quietness of our spacious home, I couldn't help but reflect on the past decade. My name is Emma, and this is the story of a dream that remained just that, a dream. Michael and I met in our late 20s. He was everything I had hoped for in a partner, kind, understanding, and with a sense of humor that could lighten even the darkest days. We married within a year of meeting, full of love and hopes for a future that included children, laughter, and shared memories. From the beginning, we were eager to start a family. But as months turned into years with no success, our optimism slowly began to wane. We tried everything: doctors, treatments, endless tests. But the result was always the same. Nothing worked. The unspoken disappointment grew heavier with each passing day. Our families, especially Michael's, were less than supportive. His mother, a stern woman with traditional beliefs, made her opinions loudly known. "You need to carry on the family line," she would often say, her words like daggers to my already fragile heart. "Adoption is not an option. We need our own blood." Her disapproval was a constant pressure, a reminder of my failure to fulfill the one role she deemed essential. I still remember the day Michael and I discussed adoption. We were sitting in our kitchen, the morning light casting hopeful glimmers across the table. But even as we spoke of names and nursery colors, I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the unspoken fears of going against his family's wishes. That conversation, full of hope, ended in silence, the dream of adoption fading away like a mirage. Our marriage, once a source of strength and comfort, began to feel the strain. Conversations grew shorter, nights lonelier. I could feel Michael drifting away, his once warm gaze now often clouded with unspoken thoughts. One evening, as I walked past our home office, I overheard a conversation that would change everything. Michael's voice, usually so calm, was tinged with a tension I'd never heard before. His mother's voice, on the other end of the phone, was insistent. "Michael, you need to think about your future. You can't waste your life with a woman who can't give you children. It's time to find someone young, someone healthy," she said, her words like a cold, piercing wind. There was a pause, and I held my breath, waiting, hoping for Michael to defend our love, our marriage. But his response was a heart-shattering silence, followed by a hesitant, "I'll think about it, Mom." That moment, hidden in the shadows of our hallway, a part of me shattered. The uncertainty in Michael's voice, the lack of immediate rejection of his mother's cruel suggestion, spoke louder than any words of reassurance he had ever given me. The realization that my marriage, my dream of a family, was hanging by a thread, was a painful awakening. As I quietly retreated to our bedroom, the harsh truth settled in. Our journey to have a child had not just been a battle against infertility. It had become a battle for my marriage, a battle that, unbeknownst to me, I was already losing. Lying awake in bed that night, I couldn't escape the echoing words of the conversation I had overheard. The next morning, I found myself mechanically preparing breakfast, the silence between Michael and me more pronounced than ever. "Michael, we need to talk," I said, breaking the silence as we sat at the breakfast table. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine with a mix of sadness and resignation. "I know, Emma. After last night, I know. I overheard your conversation with your mother," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael's expression changed to one of shock and then guilt. "Emma, I didn't mean for you to hear that." "But I did, Michael, and it hurts, knowing that you're even considering it," I replied, trying to hold back my tears. He reached across the table, his hand hesitating before touching mine. "I'm sorry, Emma. I'm lost. I don't know what to do anymore." I withdrew my hand, feeling a chasm growing between us. "I've made an appointment with a new specialist, Dr. Simmons. They say he's the best in fertility treatments. I want to try, one last time." Michael nodded slowly. "Okay, Emma. If that's what you want, I'll support you." The appointment with Dr. Simmons was filled with a mix of hope and dread. His office was clinical and impersonal, much like the news he delivered. "I've reviewed your previous tests and treatments," Dr. Simmons began, his voice steady and professional. "I'm afraid the likelihood of you conceiving is less than 1%. The finality in his words hit me like a physical blow. "So, there's no chance?" I asked, clinging to a sliver of hope. Dr. Simmons sighed. "It's highly unlikely, Emma. I'm sorry." I sat there, numb, the dreams of motherhood dissolving around me. Michael reached for my hand, a gesture of support, but it felt empty, devoid of the connection we once shared. On the drive home, we spoke little. The air was thick with unspoken words and broken dreams. Back home, I found the courage to voice the thought that had been haunting me. "Michael, if you want to leave, to find someone else, I won't hold it against you." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Emma, I never wanted this to be about choosing. I love you, but I also want a family, and I don't know if I can let go of that dream." His words were like a confirmation of what I already knew. Our marriage was at its breaking point, not because of lack of love, but because of unfulfilled dreams. In that moment, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the gap between two people's needs and desires. And as the sun set on that day, so did it on the life we had built together, leaving us at a crossroads, uncertain of what lay ahead. The days following our conversation blurred into each other, each as hollow and heavy as the last. The decision to divorce, once spoken into existence, loomed over us like an inevitable storm. We moved through the motions, packing and dividing our shared life with a somber efficiency. I temporarily moved in with my sister Lily, who had always been my rock. Her small apartment was a stark contrast to the home I had shared with Michael, but it was a welcome haven in the storm of my life. "Emma, you know you can stay as long as you need, right?" Lily said one evening as we sat in her living room, a half-empty pizza box on the coffee table. I nodded, managing a small smile. "Thanks, Lil. I don't know what I'd do without you." She reached over, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're stronger than you think, Em. You'll get through this." But as comforting as her words were, I couldn't shake off the feeling of failure, of a future slipping through my fingers. A month after the divorce, I attended a party hosted by mutual friends of Michael and me. I had debated whether to go, but Lily insisted it would be good for me to get out. The party was in full swing when I arrived, and I did my best to mingle, to smile and engage in small talk. Then I saw him. Michael was there, across the room, laughing at something a young woman said to him. My heart clenched at the sight. He looked the same, yet different, lighter somehow. As if sensing my gaze, he looked up and our eyes met. For a moment, everything else faded. He excused himself from the conversation and made his way over to me. "Emma," he greeted, his voice a familiar melody that stirred old feelings. "Michael," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "It's good to see you," he said, and I wondered if he really meant it. "You too," I lied, the words tasting bitter. We stood awkwardly for a moment before he spoke again. "How have you been?" "I'm getting by," I said, shrugging slightly. "And you?" He nodded. "Yeah, same. Getting by." The conversation that followed was a dance around the past, careful and measured. We talked about work, about mutual friends, about everything except the elephant in the room, our failed marriage. "I should get going," I said eventually, the weight of his presence becoming too much. "Right. Yeah, of course," Michael replied, his eyes holding mine for a moment longer than necessary. I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I left the party, I couldn't help but feel like I was leaving a part of myself behind, a part that belonged to a different life, a different Emma. A few weeks after the party, Michael called me out of the blue. Hearing his voice again sent a jumble of emotions through me. "Hey, Emma, I was wondering if we could meet up. There's something I need to talk to you about," Michael said, sounding hesitant. Curiosity got the better of me. "Sure, Michael. Where do you want to meet?" "How about the cafe where we used to go on Saturdays?" he suggested. The cafe was a place filled with memories of laughter and shared dreams. Sitting across from Michael in the familiar setting felt surreal. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Emma, I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started. About us. About everything that happened.